Off the top, today off the top, we don't play no games around here. We don't, fuck you heard. We don't mess around. You feel me, yo? No, I'm just kidding. Welcome to the Cupid and the Pitbull podcast. When I was in high school, I was a politician. Well, half of my high school career was that. As you heard earlier, the earlier half was just reclusive and maybe a little worrisome. I've always been a late bloomer, so things always come to me after they come to everyone else. It's weird. Maybe this is what that thing is about, like the early bird catches the worm or gets the piranha, or I don't know. The earliest bird gets the most dangerous fish or something like that. But I don't know. It's 7:30. I'm up early, not by choice. I've been up early, stewing around, wandering through, and gallivanting. It's been interesting. So then I was like, well, why don't you just do a podcast? Now, what's weird about it is I started out with these. Remember what I was saying? Every day. Do it every day. And we did do it every day for 15 days. You got a good overview of what this is going to be, which is essentially just talking in place. But you also have some questions, which I'm understanding. There is a degree of curiosity. I'm really excited about that because it makes me want to dive deeper into these stories and share their meaning. So who knows if we'll do a story today? I'll say what I always say. No one ever knew anything, and we'll never know nothing. But I wanted to describe the scene before we moved outside of the present, just because I want to stick by my word. We want to continue to be present. All of us. So it's just about to be sunrise. I took a little walk. My spot is like a secluded, in the woods, little John, And then when you walk up the street, you can walk up the street and it's on a dead end. So you can go to the dead end. Wouldn't recommend it sometimes. Or you can take a left and then another left and then a right and end up in one of the most beautiful little neighborhoods. It's where I ran into that pit bull that I told you about. And so I walked there a lot. And today it was just so beautiful to look up into the sky and see God's work. The sunrise, peach pink with a touch of clementine creamsicle. It was just beautiful. It looked almost like the sun set. But the sunset only gets dimmer. The sunrise gets brighter. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Feel the way. Remember that one song, the John Legend song of Baby, since the day you came into my life. Remember that song? I used to perform that. That was one of my first songs that I performed at Arnella's. It was right after I had moved from DC, learning how to really sing from my sensei. Right before DC was college. And then, let's get to the mini story. Looks like we're going to do one. We talked about collaboration last episode. And what had me stewing this morning and kind of just up and thinking was the fact that, well, I don't know. I struggle with relationship management. And so what happens is I get to this place where I just get overwhelmed, and then it's just time to take a pause. Now, sometimes those pauses really hurt. And even though the person or people may not say anything, or even though I may cut off the channels for them to even express anything, I do feel it. And I guess I just have spent a day in overwhelmed country, just trying to figure out how best to navigate my current and closest relationships, and how best to advocate for my boundaries, and how best to ask for and listen to theirs. And what happens is, unless, again, we go back to my point about collaboration, it is the process of collaboration. It's not just the intention, it's the actual practice. You know, one of my favorite authors, Bell Hooks, talks about love, but love in action. If you're a black artiste, you feel me? I mean, and to all the authors or to all the creators right now, just coming out and opening your little crusty eyes and being like, what can I do now? Well, I just have to say that, again, it does come down to process. Though the fuel will always be intention. So just been thinking about this whole concept of collaboration and how I kind of was talking a big shit in the last episode about we need to collaborate and all of us will be collaborators. And I just, y'all, you know what the thing about it is with this podcast is you can say the things, you can state your intentions, but at the end of the day, it does come down to practice. Practicing them. And are we always going to succeed in practice? Probably not. Well, guess what happens when you don't succeed in practice? You gotta run laps. I mean, we're in the season now, so it's not time to release you. I mean, we're past that. We've made it through. You feel me? But now it's like, well, it's time to condition. So I'm conditioning. Again, I just think that I spent so much time in isolation to where I busted out and exploded in relationship with many folk. And then got to the place where I was like, dang, I'm over capacity, but then that's going to be disappointing. And it's a pattern in my life. So back to the story. Right before college, what was it? High school. And what was it? The latter 2 years. Right after we moved abruptly from Minneapolis down to North Carolina. And it was hard in a sense. I think it was harder for my brothers. They're much more sociable. Me, I kind of was just like, okay, this is what it is. Let's see how it is down here. Let's say what's up to the people. Oh, and I came to high school in my little Carl Kanai velour suit with them K-Swisses on the first day. And we came late. We came kind of like 2 months into the school year. So it was very much, who is that new kid? And I just had the greatest junior year. Even though I did sort of experience some discomfort. See, the reclusive thing that was allowed in my old home was there was just no more room for it. So I maintained an element of reclusiveness and isolation. However, I busted out and busted out hard on that school bus. Oh, and then I got into leadership with Mr. Wilkie. And then I became the library attendant. And then, it was my first time actually getting a couple in school detentions, inciting my first riots. It was just so much fun and all over the place. If I could describe myself as a pit bull in high school when I got to North Carolina, welcome to the Cupid and the Pitbull podcast. If I haven't said that already, but I think I have. I think I would compare myself. Well, you know what it would be? It would be like if the tramp from Lady and the Tramp was a pit bull mixed with that scientist on Back to the Future, Dr. Brown, mixed with just a little bit of crime mob. Crime mob. You remember crime? Remember Nuck If You Buck? With just a sprinkle of Pastor Troy. And so this pit bull would be walking around and trying to tell everybody about themselves and be all knowledgeable. And that's where I got my nickname. Proper. Because I came down and I was like, hey guys, how are you guys doing? You guys doing all right down here? I'm doing fine. I've had just quite the morning. Oh, and you know what I did? I went out bird watching. That's more northern white accent flavor, but then I was giving very much my Native American side down here. Like the northern Native American side. And it was just funny. It was like this mix of just, where is he from? But he enunciates everything so impeccably and just got better. I'm just kidding, you guys. You know what I don't want this to turn into is just too talking in place. I don't want it to just be much like a pointless story or podcast. This is your valuable time, and your valuable time could be spent anywhere. Right now, you're here with me, so I want to do you justice. Anyways, I had an interesting accent, but I was called Proper, and I went through junior year just exploring everything. I remember going to junior prom with my friend who was very much, she was a diva. I spent far too much money. Then I was like, do you want to go home and watch Star Wars? And she said, no, I only wanted to go to prom with you. Okay, we can part ways now. I think I was really annoying on prom night. I might have, I think I dropped our camera. And we had to go get a new one, but then we were late to prom and she was just not excited. So anyways, junior year, here we go. I'm down here. Oh yes. And becoming a little politician, just getting to know you, getting to know all about you, so getting to know everyone. One of my good friends' names was Chubb. He's the reason I got my first little in-school detention. We would be at, after the bell, just out in the hallways. Because, I wasn't going to be rushed. It was the hugest high school. We only had 5 minutes passing time. And you know what? If I come into your classroom just a little bit tardy, go ahead and erase that check mark. And they would do it for me. They only did it for me maybe 2 times though. Then Chubb, one time I told him I was getting away with it and he thought he could do it. But then he did it too many times. Well, both of us did, let's be honest. So we were the first in school detention. I tried to put some headphones in. They were like, "Sir, what are you doing? Are your grades top notch? Well, pop them books out. You're in school detention until the late bus comes." And I said, okay, fine. I didn't even argue. I was in 11th grade. We get done with prom in the end of 11th grade. It was so much fun. Summer comes. What is there to do? I don't even remember that summer, but then it's time to be a senior. So I retook the leadership class and realized that there were some structural problems within the system of the school that were not dealing with some microaggressions, not just racial ones, but gender ones, sexuality ones. Let's talk about it because Martina and Leah, they were two girls who liked to go to the parties and have threesomes with the little high school boys. And then the next day they would come and my guys were trying to shame them, the same ones who they popped it off with. And I'd be like, no guys, that's corny. How you about to try to shame them, but they just made your night. You guys all had a great time and you're going to do it again next weekend. So don't try to come in here getting mad because they didn't want to date you. They only wanted to kind of see what was going on. And, so that was very much Southern high school. I mean, get into the development of 8th grade to high school. So now I'm just a politician, peacemaker, trying to make sure everybody's cool. My friends, the thugs from West Charlotte, Chubb and them, Whitney, with the high socks with the forces, who loved going to the D4L concerts. And, I even think Anne-Marie was huge at that point. So she came coming out with songs. People were loving her songs in concerts. I went to a few, but the senior year was kind of embarrassing because I didn't have a car. So I was still on that bus and it was embarrassing because all the other seniors, they had rims and they had J's and they had the forces and they had the Gerbeau jeans. And I didn't have any of that, but I got along with everybody. One of my good friends, Stephanie LaRocca, she had a great friend whose name was Debbie Troy, who that I started kind of liking. She was a female basketball player. Debbie Troy looked it like she was in high school, it just would have been delicious from Flavor of Love. A little more dark, a little more beautiful. Let's get into it. So Debbie Troy was over here having the greatest time with me for 2 weeks and then moved on to John Lomax, or someone who was a little bit more stocky and had a little bit more gutter, but then introduced me to her friend who introduced me to Diana Sylvia Mendez. Now, at this point, I was becoming, the high school had one of these, went in the library, because I worked in the library helping people find their books and change their grades. And then they had this cool studio that they did the morning announcements from. And maybe 2 weeks into my senior year, they were like, are you ready? And I didn't know what they were talking about. Am I ready for what? Am I ready to skip more class? I have senioritis. And they were like, yeah, exactly. We weren't that aligned. There wasn't that much synergy, but this is kind of what I was giving in high school. It was giving I can do whatever I want to do. So really what they were talking about was, do you want to be a host for the morning announcements? And I said, on one condition. I will be a host if you play my beats for the intro music. And they were like, done. It was my first real experience just doing like contract negotiations, above the table ones. Even though this one was kind of a little sketch, because those librarians, they made all the rules and they had access to all the information. Let's get into it. So all of a sudden, I was that morning Tom Brokaw mixed with, I was going to say Don Lemon, but no. Giving very Larry King hosts Tom Brokaw's show, mixed with and really overwhelmed by Bernie Mac. So if I were to describe the type of pit bull I was, everything that I've just been talking about would be that type of pit bull, right? Just wandering, but with some sort of like superiority complex in high school. So we're walking around, we're thinking that we are the shit, and then all of a sudden, Mr. Wilkie is over here talking about the leadership counselor. He comes and he's like, psst, like around the corner in one of those hallways. And I go up to Mr. Wilkie. I'm like, what are you doing here? Don't you have class? And he was like, yeah, same. Don't you have class? Nobody else is in the hallway. You can't be tardy like this, Taylor. You can't just be walking around doing what you need to do. So I thought I was getting busted, right? I was like, I'm so sorry, Mr. Wilkie. My legs hurt and I really need more time before Miss Dietz's African American Studies class. Okay, the last time we were in there, we had our phones confiscated because Miss Dietz was like, here comes the administration. Give me your phones. We'll put them all in a box and I'll hide them. Then that's when those cops came in and everybody was like freaked out. And then here comes the punk ass Mr. York, who was a punk ass dean. I was like, Mr. Wilkie, I can't go to African American Studies class right now because I'm trying to like take in what happened last time when Mr. York came in with those cops and punked Miss Dietz to show him where the cell phones were. And then she did, and they were just all conveniently in a box, and then he took them. And then I stood up in front of everybody and I said, you know what, Mr. York? You know what? And he told me, sit down. And I said, I will not sit down. And this goes for you too, coppers. Those are our cell phones. And just because the policy says that we can't have them doesn't mean that you get to just waltz up in here into African American Studies class, the one most concentrated of cell phones, illegal cell phones and activities class that we have during this hour, and just confiscate our phones. You know, what they did was put all of the bad kids into the African American Studies class around 7th hour, like after lunch, like 6th and 7th. And they did that because after lunch was when all the drama went down. That's when I started my first riots. We'll get into those stories. But anyways, Mr. Wilkie was like, I understand that. I understand there's drama. You got to get to class, buddy. And so I walked away, but then he was like, but psst, come back here. I said, Mr. Wilkie, what? He was like, tomorrow we're going to talk about something. And he looked at me with these eyes, and I was like, what are we going to talk about? And he said, you're running for student body president. Student body, not senior body. Jeremy Falk has already gotten that locked up, and his delegates are amazing. He'll win that convention. You've got a chance to start a grassroots movement. Start with what happened in Miss Dietz's class. And then he just disappeared like a wizard. I trusted Mr. Wilkie that whole year until he told me that I wasn't going to get into the college of my choice. He said, oh, you'll never get in there. You've got too many behavioral issues. But then I said, no, Mr. Wilkie, you don't understand. I'm going to the top school in the nation. And I did. But anyways, so he puts this seed into my brain, and I go home and I ponder on it. I make more beats. I play more Driver. I play more Need for Speed, and I play more Coach Mode in Madden 03 or something like that. And we have the conversation, and I decide to put together my cabinet and start to run. Oh, and I was running against the most top-notch candidates. Joe Daly, the biggest weed dealer in the school. And he had the most bombest weed edibles. I only took him one time, but... Oh, and then Amanda Akerburn. Just one of the most beautiful little, like, firecracking, dangerous suburban white girls. Oh, and then you had Stephanie Imes giving young Michelle Obama, activist, professional, got things going on without you needing to know. And I was like, okay, you know what? I can't run against her. I need her. She was also Monique's niece from the Parkers. And Precious, she was famous in the school and in these streets. However, I overheard a little conversation one day in the back of leadership class. She was only doing it for clout. So I went to her, and she was very opposed in the beginning. And now I can really understand the gender politics behind it. It was like, no, I'm running my own campaign. I don't need to be your vice president. I don't need to be your campaign manager. I don't need, you think you just run this school. And I said, no, I don't. And we could run against each other. But together, Stephanie Imes, you and I will have glory. And then I'll step down right after I get admitted into college, and you can have the presidency for the last few months. And she was down. And you know, at the end of the day, also, she was only running for president. Her platform was not completely developed. So she wanted to have more passing time, which was one of my goals. But her reasoning behind it it wasn't sound. Her platform was not clear, and come to find out, she really didn't care about it. She wanted homecoming queen, really and truly. So I said, I'll also get you that. So we run, and then election day comes, and Joe Daly has these John Blaze posters, and he put them up everywhere. But what I did was I had magnets. So I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not even going to give these out so freely. If you want a Taylor Johnson and Stephanie Imes for your administration magnet and button, come see me. You know where I'll be. And you know why that was a brilliant idea? Well, because everybody knew that I was the host of the morning show, and I spent a lot of time in the library. All of a sudden, there was a line in the library. Word had spread. It was election day. Oh, and all my friends came from high and low, the old and the young, the blacks, the whites, the thickies and the thinners. So we have our morning. I'm getting very excited because I'm thinking, and Mr. Wilkie says, the poll shows that you might be up around like lunchtime. And I'm like, there's no guarantees, Mr. Wilkie. Go back to the leadership class. You know, very much just like an administration plant. Like the administration pretty much had decided that's who should be the president. You know, this year I did get teacher's pet in senior year. People voted me as teacher's pet. I was supposed to get best answer, but alas. But anyways, back to election day. 7th hour comes. Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Cox. We will be announcing the winner of today's election in an hour. Please ready your ears and understand that any misbehavior over this election will be punishable by out-of-school suspension. We have extra security at each of your rooms. You know who you are. Can we see the candidates in my office at once? Dude. And I'm like, oh shit. And I'm in that African American studies class and everybody looks at me like, go nigga, go, do it. Do it, my nigga. Each second begins to feel like an hour. Each breath feeling like a lifetime. And each glance at all of my peers started to feel like true connection and support, because my platform was this. Not only will I get our cell phones back, but I will provide a bridge between all of the different sides of the story in this school. We are a melting pot. You are you and I am me. The administration is the administration. The principal and his goons have their way. But guess what, you all? We have rights as well. You all, enough of the nachos every day with a limited cheese in the lunchroom. Enough of making us wait in that little holding cell in the mornings for those of us who have those early buses. Open the school if you don't have anything to hide. And enough 5-minute passing time. I want to celebrate my running mate, Stephanie Imes. She is going to get it done. If you want a good 2003, ladies and gentlemen, elect me. Elect us and elect your future. I couldn't be more honored to be running as your candidate. And today, in election, get into this speech like while I'm hosting the morning show. Nobody else has the platform. We vote for us. And those who oppose us, like Joe Daly and Miss Egerbachenter, or I forget her name, but they will no longer intimidate us with their bribery and their exclusivity to their parties. that Miss Eggerbrocker has with Leah and Martina. We've seen the pictures, all of us. Maybe the administration hasn't, but I'm a snitch. Girl, some of those girls got suspended. I didn't mean to tell on them, though. So, elect me, it was basically the speech and was basically like the vibe. And so I went down to Mr. Cox's office, and there's Joe Daly, Stephanie Imes, and why do I forget her name? It was like Amanda Eggmanschleiner or something. I forget what her name was, but he sat us down and he said, whoever wins, I hope you will go out and help the security for any uprisings. And I'm like, what? We're in high school. But sure enough, Joe Daly had a cult, a major cult. And he was mad because honestly, and we'll get into this whole story anyways, I did a freestyle contest about a week earlier, and my crew pretty much mollywopped his crew, and it was very much guess who's about to win this election. He sent us back to our classrooms. We all had to sign some sort of form. And then I was going to go back. But since I had a piece of paper in my hand, I was running for student body president, and I had what looked like a hall pass in my hand. I walked right past Mr. York on the way out, who then decided to follow me. And I turned around and I said, "Hi, Mr. York." He said, "Afternoon." Mr. York was a Kappa who became a dean at a high school, which is awesome. I was a dean in a middle school. That's for another story, though. But it's just like he knew that the moment I won, not only was I going to go and waltz into his office with a signed petition to return our cell phones, but then I was also going to give Kappa Central a call. Okay. But so we go to our respective places. Mr. York follows me all the way to the library. No, I did not go back to Miss Dietz's class. You know why? I wanted to be in my haven and hear the results. Okay. So all of a sudden I get there. Mr. York says, "Are you not in class?" I say, listen, sir, I'm going to the library. I actually get to work there whenever I need to work there. Okay. He said, "We'll talk at the end of the day." There was just such tension because I looked at this nigga because I was like, you know what? And he was, and you know, it was he reminded me of that. Have y'all ever seen The Boondocks and that Don Lemon character on The Boondocks? He reminded me of that nigga, man. I didn't like that nigga, man. He was just always trying to keep other niggas down. I didn't like him. Even young niggas, man. Go your ass to your office and fill out those carbon copy in school suspension forms and try to get grants. Get grants for the basketball court. The nets are a little dusty, sir. Get out of our business. All right? You're causing too much trouble. I go to the library. Dang. What are we at? This is going a little long, you guys. I'm sorry. The announcements come on. Dude, this is Mr. Cox. Whatever his voice was. His name was Mr. Cox. So I'm announced. And I hear a cheer throughout the walls of the high school. And I look out to Mr. York. And he looks at me. It was all clear windows in the library, and I stood there by the nonfiction. My arms folded, my eyes sharp, and my resolve intentional. I accomplished about 67% of my platform. The other things were too hard. I mean, I did call Mr. York's fraternity like a week later. They said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm a student at..." They were like, "How did you get this number? Why are you calling us?" I said, "Mr. York is being a bitch." And they said, "Well, honestly, this is far above your purview, my son." So that was a little embarrassing, but then we did, get into that. That was my strategy. But eventually we did, through our parents, get maybe like 70% of the phones back. The other phones had drug material on them, and those kids were promptly kicked out. And like, including Chubb. I'll always miss Chubb. Chubb was like 6'7", but in high school, like, why are you that tall? I started to learn how to manage my relationships and my circumstances at that time. And I was rather good at it when I wasn't distracted by pride or ego or even fear. Fear of being new, fear of difference, fear of dating and status. Because last thing is, Diana Sylvia Mendez, she then became my girlfriend. And Diana Sylvia Mendez is another story. However, she used to call me Mr. President. Oh, that's my sign. Let's get into it. Moral of the story is that the content is getting longer. I'm giving you more juice boxes. I'm learning how to be comfortable here. My voice is coming back. Moral of the story is process. Mutual process. The way, not the what. The way. And honestly, y'all, sometimes it might be a little bit unorthodox, the way. We collaborate, but in a deeper sense, build relationships, understand who and what can be beneficial, and who and what can you benefit. Mutuality, process,